Welcome to another OU Insider Under the Visor Sooners pregame podcast. It is the Alamo Bowl version. Oklahoma taking on Arizona in the Alamo Bowl at 8:15 on December 28th, which will be on Thursday. For those that are counting and keeping track, we hope you guys had a very Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays with you and your family. Parker is in San Antonio right now. Travis, you are still in Tulsa. I am in Oklahoma City, Yukon Mustang, Oklahoma City proper, Yukon zip code Mustang school district, however that works. That's how it is. But we'll be leaving to head where I'm headed tomorrow morning. So we will be all in a variety of spots. But nonetheless, Jesse's in San Antonio, Brian's in San Antonio, and Parker will be in San Antonio. So OU Insider, we will have this thing covered for you all the way around. We will be doing a post-game podcast. We will have a live sometime this week as well before the game, likely tomorrow, which would be on a Wednesday. We're planning to do a lot of coverage for you guys still leading up to this Alamo Bowl. Guys, how was your Christmas? Was it very merry?
I would categorize it as very merry. I mean, well, actually, maybe I wouldn't. It depends. Does
have to go cover?
Does covering a practice on Christmas Day make your Christmas more merry or less merry? Legitimately asking.
Merry, yeah. No, probably more merry. I mean, you got to see the freshmen, and I think that's something we're going to dive into here. We have to talk about the freshmen that are on campus. And obviously, if you have not gone and watched our National Signing Day special, go do so. It is so worth it. David Stone's in person, Jaden Jackson's in person. And I want to make this perfectly clear to everybody. We had no idea these dudes were showing up. Just so y'all know. Like, we went into that thing thinking there was like 2 or 3 guys that were going to be in person. And we had 4, 5, 6, 7 guys that ended up talking to us in person. It was an awesome event, an awesome deal where we ended up with, I think, almost 10 guys, 11 guys that we ended up interviewing. Parker, is that correct? 11? How many was there total?
The final number was 9 or 10, something like that.
9 or 10. Yeah, it was an amazing deal. So if you guys want to go, there's some interesting answers to some interesting questions that you guys may be asking yourselves about a certain recruit on there. So go check that out on OU Insider YouTube. If not, subscribe to that YouTube, and obviously go subscribe to OU Insider. All right. Now that those bills are paid, Parker, you got to see the freshmen in person.
Yeah.
What was your first thoughts?
Well, I'll tell you, I'm very impressed by how much those 7 dudes look the part. And I know that's a simple thing, but I think the best example of this is Eli Bowen, right? Because most know Eli Bowen's shorter than his brother. He's not as developed physically, or hasn't been. And at least just in terms of like building out his frame, expanding the muscle mass. And so I kind of figured, okay, it'll be easy to pick out Eli Bowen showing up because he'll just look smaller than everybody else. Not the case. Not the case. Eli Bowen definitely looked like he was a college football player, not like a guy that was taking part in a collegiate practice for the very first time as a high school senior. So, look, obviously there is a lot of work for those guys to do before they see the field in meaningful situations in an Oklahoma uniform. But, man, it's hard not to take note of those dudes in a setting like that because you're not used to seeing them. And so you see Jaden Hardy flying around in number 0. Like, it's hard for that kid not to catch your eye. You know, you see big number 65 lumbering around with hair spilling out of his helmet. Man, that's something that's going to catch your eye as well. And just so impressed. Wyatt Gilmore did not put the pads on. He's got a boot on his foot, so I don't think he's actually going to be practicing. He's just with the team right now. But the other 6, man, I took some time and watched each of those 6 individually. You had Michael Hawkins, Xavier Robinson, Eli Bowen, Jaden Hardy, Nigel Smith, and Jaden Jackson. And all 6 of those dudes legitimately looked like they belonged. And if you'd shown up, knowing absolutely nothing about the Oklahoma football team and football program, you would not have guessed, oh, yeah, those 6 dudes are high school seniors doing this thing for the very first time. So again, there's not a whole lot of conclusions you can draw from watching one practice for the 15, 20 minutes that we were allotted. But what I can say about every single one of those dudes that is going through the bowl practices before they early enroll at Oklahoma is that they do not look out of place.
Yeah, and I think what's important to me, at least, is that there's a good number of them. It's a little different when it's 1 or 2, and they can't really build they can build the camaraderie, but it's not quite the same. When you have, obviously, Wyatt's not going through it with pads, but he's still there. He's in the video, he's doing all that. So, like, when you have 7 dudes, like, you have positional stuff, like, Wyatt and Jaden Jackson and Nigel Smith, they're able to get to know each other. You have guys like Xavier Robinson being able to take handoffs from Michael Hawkins Jr., like things like that. I think the number of them, because I think what we had 4 last year, maybe 3 or 4. I know LeBlanc,
yeah,
Vickers.
It was LeBlanc,
Hicks,
Caleb
Hicks.
Makari wasn't one of them. It was Caleb.
Yeah, it was Caleb Hicks,
Captain McCown, Derek LeBlanc, and Ashton Sanders. Those were the 4 last year.
Oh, right.
Yep.
Well, I just think as that number continues to grow, it's going to be more and more effective, more impactful for these guys to be able to, build the camaraderie with the next class. I mean, these are the guys that theoretically, I know it's the age of the transfer portal, but theoretically, these guys are going to be spending a ton of time together over the next 4 years, sometimes 5 years, things like that. So I'm excited. Even the little videos. I mean, Jaden Jackson looks like a monster. Nigel Smith, the athleticism that he's got, I really enjoyed listening to him on your guys' signing day show. It's since he followed Danny Okoye, it's almost like he was trying to get some more quotables up there, because Danny was giving all kinds of quotes that are going to end up on t-shirts if they come to fruition. But yeah,
we don't need to rehash them though.
Yeah, no,
let's not. I let's just say that let's just say some of the things that were said was taken notice by people in Norman.
I don't doubt it. I don't doubt it. But yeah, I think it's good just getting the guys there, and I'm sure we'll get into the conversation at some point. I like that Michael Hawkins Jr. is getting as early and as often as work as possible.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think we brought up just how good the freshmen look. I think the one that I only got to see it on video. I didn't get to see it in person, but Xavier Robinson just looks like a man out there. Like, that is a large guy.
It's hard to figure who he looks like, to be quite honest with you, because the easiest comparison that everybody has thrown out is Samaje Perine. Oh, he looks like Samaje Perine. He's way bigger than Samaje Perine. That is, and he's so uniquely built. You're like, well, he doesn't really look like a fullback either.
You want to know who he looks like? You want to know who he looks like?
Big thighs. He's got tree trunks.
You want to know who he reminds me of? Plays a completely different position.
Who's
Jeremy Bill. He looks like Jeremy Bill in a uniform. And for those that are old enough to remember Jeremy Bill, former All-American, played for the Denver Broncos, led the Big 12 in sacks 2 years in a row, first team All Big 12 defensive end. That's who he reminds me of. Just his size, his frame. I think what you brought up, the trunk, like his butt and his thighs. I mean, it's just he's a large guy. And
seeing him pull away from people at Carl Albert, like pull away from defensive backs with that body, you're like, yeah, like how is he generating enough power to get?
He's a unicorn. He's a unicorn.
Lower body to move that quickly. I mean, it's impressive stuff.
He honestly, you want to know who he is? It's Jerome Bettis. That's who he is. That's who he is.
That's it.
He's Jerome Bettis.
And look,
they don't make him like. Remember Jamari Toon as well. Maybe I'm saying the name wrong. At Texas A&M.
Gosh, I don't remember him. But I
Dude,
do.
that just yeah. Go
I
ahead.
do remember Jerome Bettis, and
Yeah.
the thing about Jerome Bettis was that he was quite famously not very fast, right? Like he was just kind of straight
Well, he
down.
was. He was when you started watching him. Yes.
That's probably
So
true.
early in
I
his
caught the
career,
tail
in the
end of the
mid-90s,
boss's career.
in the mid-90s, all the way to about 2002, that dude could run, and he was a load. He put on some weight at the end of his career because he kept he kept going back and forth whether he was going to retire, keep playing, retire, keep playing. And then his final year, I believe, was 2009.
It was 2005. It was
Was
2005. He retired
2005.
after that
They
Super
won the
Bowl.
Super Bowl. Yeah, they won the Super Bowl. Okay, then I'm thinking of the other guy, number 11. Anyways, but yeah, he retired after the Super Bowl in 2005, and he went back and forth. He literally was retiring and didn't play. I remember a good portion to start the season, and then took over midway through the season, fresh legs, everything, because he was out of shape because he didn't think it, but he was just a load, man. He was a lineman playing running back.
Yeah. Well, and again, before anybody gets in the comments and says, seriously, you're comparing a 3-star to Jerome Bettis? No, we're just saying they look alike.
Frame.
Yeah,
Frame.
exactly. It is a
frame.
physical comparison and
Yeah.
nothing more. Xavier Robinson has a lot to accomplish and a lot to prove before we
Correct.
start putting him in the same conversation as a guy
To
like
anybody.
with
Anybody.
Sure, yes. But and he was assigned number 28 for these bowl practices.
Yeah.
Everybody's like, oh, look at all that
Golly.
pressure he's under wearing Adrian Peterson's old number. Look, let's just keep the expectations at a minimum for now. Let's let the kid develop at his own pace. But right now, what you can say about him definitively is that he looks good and he looks unique.
Mm-hmm.
And
go ahead.
You bring up the unique part. This is it's something I say every time that Xavier Robinson is brought up. Like, this dude is a running back. He can be running. I mean, he can run the ball. He can carry the ball. He can break tackles. He can run away from you. He can do other things due to his size, but so a lot of people are going to say, "Oh, we need to put him at fullback. We need to put him at that halfback, that Jeremiah Hall role, that whatever." It's like, no, this guy, you can just line him up at running back and play him at true running back. Yes, he's versatile. He's big. He can do that kind of stuff, but he wasn't recruited at fullback. I'll put it that way.
This episode of the OU Insider Under the Visor podcast is brought to you in part by Manscaped. Step into 2024 with confidence thanks to Manscaped, where resolutions are met and hairs are neatly kept. As the new year approaches, why not make self-improvement a breeze by keeping your body well groomed? The Performance Package 5.0 Ultra is here, and let me tell you, it's got futuristic tendencies. Included in this bundle is the brand new Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra, the Weed Whacker 2.0 ear and nose hair trimmer, and the essential aftercare products like the Crop Soother Ball Aftershave Lotion and Crop Preserver Anti-Chafing Ball Deodorant, as well as 2 free gifts, the Boxers 2.0 and the Shed 2.0 toiletry bag. Resolutions may come and go, but a well-groomed you is here to stay with Manscaped's latest and greatest. Start the new year right, because when you look good, you feel good. Manscaped, helping you sculpt the best version of yourself for the year ahead. Get 20% off and free shipping with the code OUinsider at manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com and use code OUinsider. Happy New Year to your balls.
No. And I think the other thing that before we go back to the practice portion and the obviously the assistant presser today and the players that you guys Parker, you, Jesse got to speak with, but we've got to talk about Casey Thompson. I think that is, and Travis, you're on, so let's talk. I already called him out over there. He's like, I'm at an event. I'll call you back.
Right. He was tuned up. I was like, man, I'm at a jazz event downtown. I can't do this right now. I can't argue about Casey Thompson.
All right. So everybody knows the backstory to Casey Thompson. He was a 4-star quarterback out of Southmore, and then transferred to Newcastle. Newcastle, where he finished off his career and is the all-time state of Oklahoma passing leader in just about every statistical category that you could think of. He owns it. And mind you, he collected the majority of those stats versus Jinx, Tulsa Union, Owasso, and those type of teams. So he was lighting dudes up as a freshman, sophomore, and junior before he moved to Newcastle. But obviously he finished off playing 4A ball in Oklahoma, still was one of the top quarterbacks in the country, chose Texas. Well, he chose Texas. The backstory to all that is he's committed to Texas because Oklahoma got Cam Rising. Cam Rising committed early. Ironically, Cam Rising decommits from Oklahoma because Kyler Murray said he was coming back and he was going to play in 2018. So he decommits. Cam Rising ends up flipping to Texas after Casey Thompson committed. I believe that was the correct way of doing it, or right before Casey announced his decision, but Casey was going to commit. They decided to take both. Either way, chronological, doesn't matter. That said, right before all this stuff takes place and before Lincoln Riley gets named the head coach, there's all this stuff of Oregon going after Lincoln Riley. There's all this stuff of Houston, all the for head coach, right? Oklahoma had bumped up Lincoln Riley's pay to a substantial amount of money. Casey Thompson goes and does a quiet visit with Lincoln Riley. Sits down, and Parker, you know the story because Charles has told the story to you before. Sits down, and Casey asks him, this is before he got the head coaching job, and he said, will you be at Oklahoma next year and throughout my career? And Lincoln Riley, to his credit, completely different than how he ended his time at Oklahoma, mind you, looked Casey Thompson in the eye and says, I'm not going to lie to you. I can't sit here and make that promise to you. Now, 2 weeks later, he becomes a head coach of the University of Oklahoma because OU did not want Lincoln Riley to leave, and Bob Stoops was ready to step away because he felt like Lincoln Riley could uphold the standard of Oklahoma. We all know that he did for a few years, but it dropped off at the end of his career at OU. Fast forward to 2022. Casey Thompson's played at Texas. He is now transferring from Texas. He is very close with Spencer Rattler, and he's very close with Caleb Williams. They are talking behind the scenes about things that are going on. I'm not going to dive into a lot of the ins and outs of all that. Nobody spoke ill of Oklahoma between that trio of people, by the way. Zero chance and zero happen of negativity said by those two players, obviously, that transferred away. At the time, Caleb was still looking to come back. Casey was kind of, gauging the temperature with him, and Dylan Gabriel had just announced that he was coming to Oklahoma. What happened is something we'll dive into in a book later on down the road, because there's a lot of different things. But what, for story purposes here, we will say that some things got misaligned, and Casey chose to go to Nebraska. He wanted to go to Oklahoma. Things did not work out the way that, and I think people can read between the lines, and I guess I can say it like this. Dylan Gabriel was Lebby's guy. And everybody knew that, between Caleb Williams to Casey Thompson to whoever else they were trying to get to come in and compete with Dylan Gabriel to start. Is that true? Yes. Do I think that there would have been a true competition? I think so. But convincing another quarterback that is a whole other can of worms. And that's where you get some things that got kind of botched a little bit there. So he ends up at Nebraska. He has an awful offensive line at Texas and gets freaking killed. but he still had a career day against OU, as most people do against Alex Grinch's defenses. And he did fairly well with a awful offensive line in Nebraska and awful skill positions outside of Palmer at Nebraska. He had nothing. He had no help. Coaching change happens there. That whole program in Nebraska falls under. He hits the portal because the who he was as a player and the offense that Nebraska was running didn't really mesh. So he ends up back with Tom Herman at FAU. He starts, has like 600, 700 yards, something like that in the first 3 games, tears his ACL. So here we are. He's rehabbing his ACL. He hits the portal. Oklahoma has been in contact with Casey Thompson. If I'm a betting man, I think Oklahoma is probably where this thing ends up. That's just me betting right now. We'll obviously know more after the bowl game, after a couple of other things happen. And I know I'm being kind of long-winded here, but at the end of the day, it's a preferred walk-on. He'd be coming to work on his doctorate, and he's coming with the purest of hearts to help out the program that he always wanted to be at, and to help the program that he feels he can help with a day-to-day game planning. He's not coming in to start. He's coming in to help and be a security blanket. That way they can, if they have to redshirt, if they feel they want to redshirt Michael Hawkins, they can. If they feel they want to redshirt Zerbrug, they can. There's so many options on the table. Thus, you see Davis Bevel get in the portal. And from there, Parker, Travis, you guys give your spiel.
Well, look, I'm not going to belabor the point here because at the end of the day, look, you're adding a backup quarterback. It's nice, but it's not hugely consequential unless things go sideways and Jackson Arnold gets injured. So I don't want to take up the vast majority of a podcast that should be used to preview the bowl, talking about the potential of you adding a backup quarterback.
Right.
But I will say this: there's absolutely no downside to adding Casey Thompson if he's not costing you a scholarship. Absolutely none whatsoever. He's a guy that has paid his dues at the collegiate level. Yeah, he's been through some stuff and he's had injuries, and it's certainly fair to question whether he could be a Power 5 starter in year 7, given all that he's been through. But you're not bringing him in to be a Power 5 starter. You're bringing him in to be support and leadership in that QB room, a very young QB room, a steady hand on the tiller to help out a first-year quarterbacks coach in Seth Luttrell, and also to be somebody that's going to provide a competitive push for those younger guys every single day on the practice field. So again, I don't think there's any downside whatsoever, especially given that you've got a first-time QB's coach in Luttrell working with that room. The experience and the perspective that a 7th-year guy like Casey Thompson could bring to the equation at Oklahoma could be very, very valuable.
Yeah, I mean, him being a PWO definitely, makes it a bit more attractive for me. I just don't want him taking reps away from Michael Hawkins Jr. or Brendan Zerbrug or even a 3rd-year General Booty in the system. He's not going through spring because he's rehabbing an ACL.
He is going through spring. He will be clear to go through spring. The only thing he cannot do and will not be able to do at that time is do live team stuff.
Okay, so he's not going through live team stuff in the spring.
Yep.
We don't know how people bounce back from ACLs. I just don't want to put all of the eggs in hey, our backup quarterback is Casey Thompson, and it shuts the door for Zerbrug and Michael Hawkins Jr. Or
I don't think that's the plan.
Like that's my only concern is like, okay, it's a break glass in case of emergency type situation. Like, is this guy getting all the backup reps? Is this are Zerbrug and Hawkins having to fight for the scraps with some walk-ons or whatever, right? Like,
let me ask you, you're playing Alabama on the road. Heaven forbid Jackson Arnold, something happens. You throwing Michael Hawkins or Zerbrug out there over Casey Thompson, who's been through it before?
First of all, we're playing Alabama at home.
6,000 yards, 52 touchdowns.
And it's in November. He threw for 5 touchdowns and 5 picks last year. through 3 games, threw no touchdowns in 2/3 of his games against obviously the best opponents.
Clemson. He played Clemson at
okay,
FAU, man.
let me be the one to answer this question.
He put up stats against Monmouth. That was great.
As to who you throw in there, if you have to go to your backup against a team like Alabama, I think it's okay to sit here and acknowledge we don't know the answer to that question yet.
No, and that's fair, but I'm just saying, like,
Michael Hawkins might turn out to be a whiz kid on the practice field that is the unquestioned clear number 2 by September, or he might hit that freshman wall where he's still in a learning and development process, and it makes more sense for Casey Thompson to be QB2. I think it's fair to acknowledge, we don't know what that depth chart is going to look like in September, and we don't have to know. All you need at a place like Oklahoma is,
and that's not what he's coming in for,
and the rest will take care of itself.
Yeah, and he's just coming in to be a helping hand. He's out. That's been acknowledged by those around him. Like that's it for him to be a helping hand, to be able to go through pro day, because he turned down XFL draft. Like he was going to be a top pick of the XFL and all that. And there were franchises that want to run their whole franchise around him and his capabilities and all that. But he wants to try his hand to see what he can do in the NFL. And if he can go through the pro day at OU doing all this, then more power to him. I mean, I think that's where people's heads got to be like, this is a win-win for both parties. If it works out, So anyway,
we can move on.
Yep. Anyways, Arizona, the number 14 team in the country, Oklahoma, number 12. There's a lot of, and I was talking to a source today that said, look, Oklahoma feels good about the offensive line. I think they have some questions, obviously, at left guard and at center right now. They're trying to iron both of those situations out before the game that kicks off in about 72 hours, or less than that, probably 52 hours or so. So your thoughts, Parker, what's the feel down there of, do you think this Oklahoma team is, after all the portal entries, after everything, do you think they still have the depth and the I guess the manpower to go in and beat Arizona?
Yeah, well, I think the only question to me is, what does the offensive line look like? And let's say you lose a guy early in the game like you did last year against Florida State when Jacob Sexton went down on the very first play. Like, can you solve the issue from there? Can you cobble something together if something goes sideways mid-game? Now, you're gonna be able to roll out 5 experienced guys, regardless of what that looks like. Caleb Schaefer is healthy and listed as a starter for Oklahoma on the depth chart, which I did not expect, to be honest with you. And he wasn't really a guy I'd been putting out feelers on because he's, and I mean this respectfully, like, he's an easy guy to forget about. He's an easy guy to overlook in that room in the offensive line, just because he hasn't played a ton this year. He's a 5th-year senior, and because he suffered an injury that looked to be pretty painful and pretty debilitating in the Sooners' final home game of the year. And so I kind of subconsciously had ruled him out for this game, just because I figured in the moment, watching him limp off the field against TCU, he's done. But you have him in the mix. You've got Troy Everett. You've got McCade Mettauer, your trusty right guard. So the interior, I think you have answers there. I don't know if they're the answers, but you have answers there. And then at your 2 tackle spots, you got Big Sexy and you got Walter Rouse. And I think that is an adequate lineup for Oklahoma to be able to do what they want to do offensively, which is open lanes for Gavin Sawchuk and protect Jackson Arnold. So yes, I think they've got the depth. There's not really a position group on this squad that I'm worried about being able to hold their own. I think the question becomes, okay, does Jackson Arnold look like all that he's been cracked up to be in his first collegiate start? And can he win a duel of exciting young signal callers as he's pitted against Arizona's Noah Fifita, who is a very fun football player, guys? Noah Fifita, he's somebody that's going to present matchup problems for Oklahoma. And Ted Roof talked about it today in the Oklahoma team session at the Alamo Dome. He said, look, you always got to account for what that kid can do with his legs. So he can hurt you with his arm, but he will make you hurt just as bad with his legs if given the opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, Troy Everett, if he's healthy, I feel confident with him at center. Wasn't he a freshman All-American at Appalachian State as center? I mean, he played there. He played center before he got to OU. He was brought in to back up
britches. I think that's the worry. He's a little light in the britches compared to everybody else. I think that's the biggest worry is his size.
Yeah, but light in the britches at center is a lot better than light in the britches at guard
fair. Yeah.
Tackle. Like that's where it was. I think a lot of people watched him play guard and then saw Caden Green come in, and these guys, these bigger guys come in, and Caleb Schaefer come in, who's what, 350, 340, something like that. Like, you've got big guys that they would compare him to at guard, and they'd say, God, man, he's got to get bigger. Well, if you compare him to the centers that we've had, even just over the last 10 years, he's not that far off from a center size. So I like Everett a lot. I like his experience at center. I mean, like I said, there's a reason he was brought in, backup Rame, and he just played a lot of ball, and they trusted him, in spot duty at guard. I think when Caden entered the portal, I think a lot of people thought, I mean, we probably still get it on every, oh, hey, we've got a new offer out to a wide receiver. Well, can he play offensive line? Can he block? I think the initial shock definitely contributed to part of that, but you've got a lot of Caleb Schaefer's played a ton of football. Walter Rouse has played a ton of football. Jacob Sexton likely would have started this year had he not been injured last year. Like Troy Everett has actually played for his age, he's actually played a good amount of football. McCade Mattire's played a good amount of football. I believe he's slotted in at right guard from what I saw, I believe. So, I mean, you've got dudes that have played a ton of football. So the only worry is, like you said, if somebody gets banged up, it gets real thin real fast. So you got guys like Logan Howland, Jake Taylor, Josh Bates that are going to have to grow up really quickly, or Seth Luttrell is going to have to get extremely creative and get that ball out of, just call plays that help out your offensive line immensely.
Yeah, the like Parker said, and like you said, I think the big worry is just injury at this point. I think there's a trust in Josh Bates. You talk to a lot of people inside the program, and they feel like he's got a chance to be downright special when it's all said and done. And I talked to somebody the other day, and they're like, look, he's barrel chested. He's big. Like that dude, he's big, he's strong. And they said he comes with that nasty. And it's one of those things that at 315 pounds and 6'3", 6'4", whatever he is, he comes with a little bit of power behind that nastiness that he brings to the table. The mental game is where it's just going to be move so fast for him in this game, because look, Arizona is far from a pushover defensively. They're not world beaters by any stretch of the imagination, but they make enough plays that warrant enough of some worry if things don't get moving and I guess in a groove quickly. And I don't know if you can pin that on, youthfulness at center, if it is Josh Bates or if it is Everett, just regardless of how much he's played, just being thrusted in there, right? But the good news is he's going to have McCade Matwire within ear's distance, and he's already come out and said, I'm going to help make the calls at the line, the check with me, the shades, and if we're going to do certain things at the line, who's got who in the head up schemes and all that. So that is going to be very critical when it comes to just, seeing blitzes and all that and calling them out and, everything that comes with the communication on the offensive line. So having that guy out there that has played so much, having obviously Rouse on the edge and Sexton on the edge, guys that understand and they know football, and they've seen it. They're just smart football players. Even Caleb Schaefer, if you have him out there. So if it's Everett, if it's Bates, I mean, it doesn't matter, I don't think, at center, as long as they do their job, because I think the mental part's going to be taken away from them. The other guys are going to be the ones making the calls for them that way, and doing the communicating for them. That way they can just play. And I think that's going to help Jackson in the end, because that's what Jackson needs. He doesn't need to be worrying about who's coming from where and doing this and checking. He's got to worry about the coverages, right? He'll see the blitzes and all that, but he's got to worry about the coverages. Is it 0? Is it 4? Is it 3? Is it 2? Is it 6? Are they in 5, 4, whatever? As far as like how many people are going to be dropping back in coverage, that's the stuff he's got to worry about, because at the end of the day, that's going to be moving quickly. They're going to disguise so many things. So as a freshman, first start, he needs to just worry about that. And the line just needs to be able to communicate. And I think that's where it is. I think there is some worry, but I don't think it's enough that you sit back and go, oh man, Jackson may be running for his life in this bowl game. I don't think that's the case at all. I think there's some over exaggeration to an extent from some people on that. But as far as the defensive side, guys, do you think we see some young guys play significantly more than we did during the season in this bowl game? And who will it be?
I think so. My first thought is that's instantly going to be contingent upon who Jackson Arnold has developed chemistry with on the practice field and or trust in game situations. Because one of the things I pointed out in the BYU game is, whereas Drake Stoops seemed to be Dylan Gabriel's go-to guy throughout the season, when Jackson Arnold got in the game, Jalil Farouk seemed to be the guy that he keyed on and that he was looking to get the ball to above all else. And so I wonder, given 15 practices with the QB1 reps for Arnold, will he have developed additional chemistry with the likes of a Jaden Gibson, for instance, or even a Jaquez Petaway? I think back to the Alamo Bowl 2 years ago, right, where that was really Farouk's coming out party, because you had some wide receivers declare for the draft. Some had entered the portal. And so wide receiver, Oklahoma had a real shortage in that game against Oregon at the wide receiver position. And Jalil Farouk, of course, who went back years and years with Caleb Williams. I mean, those two are as tight as it gets. Jalil was one guy that Caleb was looking for with regularity that night. And so is it going to be more the same with a guy like Jaquez Petaway, with Jackson Arnold getting the start for the Sooners at the Alamo Dome on Thursday? That would be my first thought. And then also going back to the offensive line, there's going to be plenty of opportunity, I think, if one of those elder statesmen in the group, a Troy Everett or a Caleb Schaefer, if those guys get beaten up and beaten around the first couple drives of the game, I don't think there would be a hesitance on Bill Bedenbaugh's part to give a guy like Josh Bates or Heath Ozida some run and see if they can run.
I want to see Ozida so bad.
I know.
I've heard so much about just how big of
the
a
lone scholarship ginger at the University of Oklahoma.
I feel bad I didn't say him with the Howland. I meant to include him in the Howland Bates and Taylor talk, but no, I dig me some Heath Ozida, no doubt. But yeah, I think to your point on the young side of things, it just feels like it feels like PJ's gonna have a breakout game, like where we just say, okay, that's the 5-star right there. We've seen it from Peyton. You see it when you like watch film on PJ, but I mean, we've seen the 5-star flashes from Jackson. Obviously, he's going to be starting this game. I think you see that from PJ and I'm glad you brought up Jalil Farouk from a couple of years ago, because, everybody got drunk on Charleston Rambo. He was mocked as a first-round pick from Todd McShay after that bowl game against Alabama. First-round pick before he transferred out, obviously.
Jalil
Farouk obviously had his breakout game. Gavin Sawchuk had his breakout game in the Cheez-It Bowl. And that's my question is, who's that? Somebody's going to have a monster game. Now, is that going to be a receiver like we've seen in years past, like a pass catcher or receiver of some type, or is there going to be a defender that just goes off? Because I mean, we've had some defenders over the last couple of years have really good games. I think was Marcus Stripling that had a really good game.
Yeah.
And it was like just out of nowhere, he's like, yeah, man, just something clicked. And like I don't know if you see that from R. Mason Thomas or PJ.
Dang it. That's where I was gonna go. I honestly think that R. Mason Thomas, he's been hurt all season.
You're like, don't say it.
But he finally got his sack against TCU, right? Like he got his first sack of the season. It was the first game he had. You saw his twitchiness, and he was getting back there and really causing havoc in the backfield. That final home game. So I think now that he's even further away from both ankles with the high ankle sprain, and his on the ligaments are stronger, he's going to feel more comfortable, more confident with his push off and his get off. They talked about him before the season being the best player on the defense. And obviously now we've seen Billy Bowman. That's saying something, because Billy Bowman and Danny Sussman were still on that defense, by the way. And everybody talked to
two-time all-conference Ethan Downs.
Yeah, well, yes, exactly. And so those three guys on the team, and you still had everybody talking up R. Mason Thomas this fall camp. Like, this guy is next level, and then he went off and hurt himself. I just think he has a game. I think he has a game. I think that's the guy on defense that you look back and you're like, okay, that guy came to play. He's healthy. That's something to look forward to next year in the SEC. So I think him, and I'm going to say Nick Anderson. I think Nick Anderson and Jackson Arnold just continue to come together as far as like just cohesiveness.
To your point, or to Parker's point earlier, he was bringing up Petaway and Gibson. You bring up Anderson early on, like when they were doing the Jack Dozer package or whatever the heck people are calling it. Like when those two, when Anderson early in the season, Anderson Gibson weren't getting many snaps, they were going out there with Jackson. Like that package was those two and Jackson. Like, so anytime anybody brings up, hey, who does Jackson likely have, the most chemistry with, the most reps with? I immediately think Gibson and Anderson. And then in that Tulsa game, that's all I could think about was, the highlight throws to Gibson, Anderson. So I'm glad you brought up Anderson.
Yeah, no, he did. He against Tulsa, he had that really good throw to him. I just think that Dylan had such a strong bond with his roommate Drake Stoops that I can't foresee that being the case. Do I think Drake is going to get targeted quite a bit? Yes. But I don't think it's going to be one of those deals where they just automatically look to him anytime they need a big play, because I think Jackson is a little bit more comfortable. I think Austin Stogner is going to get more looks. In that video you showed Parker at the practice, it looked like Arnold and Stogner seem to have a pretty good cohesive bond together as far as timing goes. Did you get that sense? Like, who did you get a sense that Jackson felt really comfortable with in the allotted amount of time that you got to watch?
From a timing perspective, which is really all you can gauge looking at what they were doing, it looked like the two guys that he was in lockstep with above the rest were Stogner and Nick Anderson. So look, I've been driving the bus for Nick Anderson for upwards of a year now. I think he was actually criminally underutilized this year, all things considered, in Jeff Lebby's offense. I'm super excited to see the growth and the strides that he can make sophomore year to junior year. Well, I guess redshirt freshman year to redshirt sophomore year, and just see what a force he can be in the SEC come 2024. But yeah, Nick Anderson right up there with Stogner as the guys that, from what I saw in practice, it definitely seemed like Arnold was on the same page with.
Well, and not only being on the same page with, but I'm really interested to see with a former tight ends position coach calling the plays and the co-offensive coordinator being the tight ends position coach and a former tight end. Like, I don't know. I just want to see, do we see the tight end get used a little bit more with those guys at the helm calling the shots? I have to think you do.
No, I do. I think the tight end's going to go. You know, there were several that joked that said, "Hey, look, now that those two have been named, Austin Stogner's on cloud nine right now." He was a joke, but there was some validity and truth behind it, because Levy didn't really like to use the tight end over the middle. That wasn't something he was real comfortable with. He liked the Brayden Willises outside, and that's the way they were used. So let's talk about your predictions on the game. Let's talk about just who you think's going to shine, and I guess 2 or 3 keys of the game that you think Oklahoma needs to do to win.
I guess the first place I would start is Arizona's got some talented receivers. Jacob Cowing, Tetaroa McMillan, a guy that was, if only briefly, a 5-star prospect and was committed to Oregon before flipping to Arizona late in the 2022 cycle, if I recall correctly. But they got some studs at wideout. Obviously, Noah Fafita is a guy that can extend plays with his legs, and with that in mind, you're going to need to see the Sooners secondary play good ball. And that starts obviously with Woody Washington in what Sooner fans hope is not his final collegiate game. Obviously, for a matter of weeks now, there's been continued momentum in the direction of him returning for a 6th year, which would be huge for this Oklahoma defense. But Gentry Williams as well, fellow 918 native. I know I'll let Travis wax poetic about Gentry Williams here in a second, but I think it's got to start with the play of the corners and the safeties. Key Lawrence is out the door. He's committed to Ole Miss via the transfer portal. So I would think that opens up some additional opportunities for Robert Spears Jennings and Peyton Bowen. The secondary is going to have to hold their own, and they're probably going to have to hold their own on certain plays for 5, 6, 7 seconds as opposed to 3 and 4. And so I need to see strong play from that group on Thursday night. And again, if we're going to, I guess if we're going to flip over to the offensive side of the ball, it's easy to focus on Jackson Arnold and the play of his receiver core. But another 100-yard night from Gavin Sawchuk, man, how much easier would that make Jackson Arnold's life? And how much pressure would that take off his shoulders to make it all happen through the air? Now, Gavin Sawchuk came on so strong down the stretch in the 2023 regular season, became the bell cow in the Oklahoma offense. And if he can run the ball with the same degree of effectiveness that he did in the final 4 games of the regular season, Arizona's going to have to account for that. And that's going to open up opportunities down the field for the Sooners' very talented and very deep group of wideouts to get open, and for Jackson Arnold to deliver precise balls. And we know he can do that. We know, they're playing in a dome on Thursday. So some of those shots that he missed up in the mountain air in BYU, those aren't going to get missed this time around.
All right. So, I'm glad you bring up the 918 with my boy Gentry. I was going to use the 918 to bring up Robert Spears Jennings. It's interesting because when he was entering the portal, so many people, were talking about, it's Jaden Hardy's coming and it's Peyton Bowen season. It's all this and the other. And I think a lot of people forget about Robert Spears Jennings, just how big physical presence that he is back there. I mean, he can run. There's no doubt about that. He played he played both ways in high school. He started out at wide receiver, and then played that at Broken Arrow before, switching over to the other side of the ball and playing both ways. But that dude can run, he can cover, and he loves to hit. And he has put on incredible just size since being at OU, and he likes to show that off with his shoulder pads. So I think he'll have a couple big hits, couple hit stick type situations. But as vanilla as this sounds, I think you're going to see really Billy and Danny play some of their best football because decisions are over. Like there's Steve Jobs wore the same thing every day because he subscribes to the idea of decision fatigue. And the more decisions you make in a day, the worse you become at each decision. So, like, regardless of how focused, they could be in a game or anything, it's just simply distracting when people are, hey, are you going to the NFL or not? Have you got your draft grade back? Have you talked to scouts? What has Drew Hill told you? Like this kind of stuff. Like, have you talked to your family about stuff? Like, have you talked to Jada about stuff? Like, there's just there are so many questions that come along with that, and a big decision that has to be made. So I think those guys just having that weight completely off their shoulders, it being public. I'm glad Billy announced before the bowl. I know there was some discussion of him announcing after the bowl, but I'm glad all that took place before the bowl because I think they're going to play loose. They're going to play free. And I just think, I know it's the easiest vanilla answer of all time to say the two All-Americans will play well in the bowl. But I really do feel that they're going to have some standout performances as far as the offensive side of the ball goes. I mean, again, just like Parker said, if you look at last year, we were starting a lot of offensive linemen that, didn't have a ton of experience. And it looked like they were just like, hey, just go maul everybody. It was the best run blocking performance I've seen out of an OU offensive line. And I mean, it was incredible. So obviously with the run blocking, if they can just go hit people and move forward and go maul people and they know they're going to run, I like the way that probably plays out with our offensive line depth right now. So run game, I want to see who else steps up besides Sawchuck. I know Sawchuck's going to get his. He's going to get a share of the carries, all that workload. But, running backs are in the portal. So you're going to have young guys step up. Is this a Caleb Hicks opportunity, for him to rip one off or something like that? There's always a young offensive guy that shows out. It's just you got to spin the wheel and pick who it's going to be. So I'll go running back besides Gavin Sawchuck to have a big game, even though Gavin leads the team in carries and yards.
All right. For me, I think Travis, you just kind of nailed it there with the run game. I think with Jackson being just so green, right? Like, yeah, it's in a dome. Yes, he's played well in domes his whole career. At high school, like that's where he seemed to shine the most, is when he was in the domes, whether it was at the start Frisco or down there in Arlington at AT&T. So, and a variety of other places that he played in domes. But I think Jackson is going to play well, but I think it's because Sawchuck and Barnes go. I think you see a Barnes that is more comfortable if he's healthy. Mind you, he's got to be fully healthy. He's been battling a lot of different knee problems on top of his ankle issue or top of his foot issue throughout the season. And he's gradually gotten better. You saw it as the season ended. They started kind of putting him out there and letting him make some runs. And he did okay. But now you're 4 weeks out from your last game. The guys have had a chance to go heal up. They've gotten treatment for a month. There hasn't been a lot of wear and tear on their bodies because they haven't been taking hits and stuff in practice outside of a few here or there. So overall, I think you're going to see the run game relied upon. You're going to see Jackson, and Seth Luttrell has said it, like that is what he likes to do. He likes to use the run game to set up the pass. And so with that in mind, I think you have to look at those two or Tommy Walker, a guy that we haven't talked a lot about, but he's on the team. He's going to play even though he's in the portal. And if he doesn't like some of the stuff that's going on in the portal, he'll be back in Norman. I think there's a good chance the dude ends up back in Norman, to be honest with you. So, I think you look at that, and I think you again, both the OCs are tight end guys. I think they use the tight end over the middle to open up the deep outside and the verticals outside. And I think they use it quite a bit. And when I say quite a bit, I say 5, 6, 7 targets at Stogner and the tight ends, and at least make the defense account for them. They're not just out there a wasted route. And I think that is going to help open up the offense. We saw it happen during the season. When they used the tight end over the middle, the offense opened up. Things just seemed a lot more smooth. And I think you see that just because both guys are tight ends. Tight end guys, as their more comfortable trade on offense, is what they've done over the years as position coaches. On defense, again, I said I think R. Mason Thomas steps up. I do. I think he does. I think he has a big day. I think PJ Adebawore has a big day, or Adebawara. There you go. PJ Adebawara has a big day. I think Billy Bowman does as well. Just like you guys said, the decisions are done. Stutzman, Bowman, they played their best ball game. Probably Bowman's played well at the end of the season. This will be Danny's best game since Texas. And I feel that. But if they don't shut down Fifita, and when I say shut down, I mean keep him within the pocket. Do not let him run around and extend plays with his legs, because that's where he's deadly. He's deadly when the back end of the defense breaks down because their eyes are on him trying to see if he's going to break the plane of the line of scrimmage or not, and he's just running around getting chased by the defensive line. I think there's got to be some containment, and yet I think there's got to be controlled aggression with that. What I mean by that is, yeah, Venables and Roof need to continue to do what they've done all season, and that is bring pressure from all different angles, but they got to do it within reason. If not, you're going to remember the days where the running quarterbacks would just kill Oklahoma? That could happen again with Fifita. So that's what I see happening. And I'll go ahead and give a score. I got Oklahoma 35-23.
I haven't thought about a score yet. I will say the score of the last Alamo Bowl was 47-32, which was bizarre. I think that was a scoregami, actually. I think that's the only game in the history of college football that's finished with that score. I'll say Oklahoma gets it done, and I do believe they're going to get it done. I'm not big on this one being a barn burner necessarily.
No,
Again, you got two talented quarterbacks, but I think both these teams are better on defense than what they're given credit for. I believe the final score ends up being Oklahoma 31, Arizona 27, and Jackson Arnold gets to be the architect of a game-winning drive in his first collegiate start.
Ooh.
Could be with 5 minutes left, could be with 30 seconds left, but I think Arnold puts together a drive to give Oklahoma the victory.
I'm very close to Parker on mine, like very close. I've got it 31-28 with Zach Schmidt walking it off with a field goal to avoid overtime.
It's opposite day. What happened during the season?
Yeah, here's a better question. What happens if Oklahoma actually gets in a situation where Zach Schmidt has to walk them off with a field goal?
He's going to make it, man. Finally.
Yeah,
I'm telling you, Zach Schmidt's walking this thing off.
The fan base will have zero confidence in him to make that kick, but I would hope for his sake he could hit it.
So my family, we do this thing where we always pick the games of the week. So with bowl season, there's like 3 or 4 games every day. So we always pick our favorite game and we pick a score, and whatever the winner gets, like, I think like $100 or whatever, which means I just get to keep my $100. But at the end of the day, so I had 33-28 originally. I just went 35-23. I just changed it up right here last second. So I'm going to stick with it though, 35-23. I just have a feeling that it's close through 3.5 quarters. And I think Jackson in the offense, and the defense, I think, starts to really settle in on things, and Venables gets in a groove the last quarter and shuts things down with Atlanta or with Arizona, and Jackson gets in a groove in the fourth quarter and separates OU to make it a 2-score game. That's what I think happens. So anyways, I think it's going to be a great bowl game. Either way, I think it's going to be one of the better bowl games that we've seen so far as just talent, as far as good football being played. So I'm excited for it. I know you guys are excited for it. Make sure you guys subscribe to this channel right here. YouTube channel. We're almost up to 14.2. We're trying to get to 25,000 by season. That's the goal. 11,000 more than we have. If we can do it, it'd be great. So Sooner fans, please help. Subscribe. A lot of content going out throughout all the off season. A lot of really cool ideas that we have coming on this video channel right here for you. Basketball, baseball, softball, football, recruiting, all of it. OU related, college football related, college sports related right here on OU Insider YouTube. Go to ouinsider.com, subscribe, $99 a month, $9.95 a month. If you want to go month to month, give us a try. We would love to have you guys there. We've grown by leaps and bounds. We can't thank you guys enough. Parker, do we have an ad read that we need to do, or is it going to be just put in there?
Yeah, we don't need to worry about that. I'll make sure it gets added in there. We're good on that front.
All right. Well, that's going to do it then for this version of the OU Insider Under the Visor Sooners pregame podcast. From my man Travis Davison, from my man Parker Thune, my name's Brandon Drum. You guys have a blessed day. We will see you guys on Thursday night.